Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me out there?
Yes.
Can you hear me out there? Can I hear a shout? Can you hear me from outside? All right. All right, great. So this is our outside-inside strategy here, trying to work with the new members of Congress when of course, the historic election took place back in November. The first thought that comes to our mind is how can we keep the momentum? How can we keep the energy? How can we get people excited and mobilized to continue past an election? Because a lot of times, as you know, elections are like those things you just do and then you go to sleep for a few years until you are called upon to come back and vote again. And we want to be able to change that. How many of you want to change that? All right. All right. So this is great. As an Arab, as a Muslim, as an American, I'm very proud today, I have to say. And I have to say that it's really exciting to see the first two Muslim women be sworn in. That was historic. That's historic. The first Arab woman being sworn in. That's historic. And I was talking with Medea Benjamin of CODEPINK, and I was asking her earlier, I said, how is the energy there in the Congress? How many of you were in the Congress today? A lot of you were there. I asked her, how was the energy today? And she said, you know, at Rashida Tlaib's party at her office, there was a lot of excitement. And she said, Arabs are really ecstatic. And my question was, it's kind of bittersweet to be ecstatic over one person being elected that represents your identity and who you are. And I said, how do white men get ecstatic these days? That's what I want to know. How do they get ecstatic? But so these are very exciting times. And when we started to put this together, we wanted to bring our community, you all, together in a place, because sometimes you need to just be together. Sometimes you just need to be sitting next to each other. Sometimes you just need to turn to the person next to you and put your hand on their back and say, I got your back. Can we all do that? You know, I don't go to church, but this is as close to church as it gets for me. So these are really exciting times, and I couldn't think of better folks to come up forward here and help us to kind of guide the night. And you are the guests of honor, by the way. We have many, many members of Congress that had RSVP'd to us and said that they're coming and they will try their best to be here. But as you know, today is a historic day for them. And many of them have to stay behind and vote. There's a vote that's happening in Congress, I believe, at 8 o'clock. So many of them have had to stay there to be able to make that first vote or second vote, third vote, whatever the vote happened to be today for them. And many of them have said that once that vote is over, they will stop by. So we are hoping to see some of them come by. They've all said thank you to all of you. Thank you for the people that made it happen. Thank you for all of the excitement that you brought forward. Today in Congress was an incredibly exciting day for those of you that made it there. A lot of new energy, and I hope that energy continues to permeate throughout this the next few years. All right? I wanted to sort of have us get started with a few words from a very, very good friend and a spiritual leader in our community. And I just wanted everybody to just kind of pause for a moment and kind of take the day and really kind of be in the moment, because sometimes we forget these moments when things get tough, right? And these are the moments we have to call back on. These are the moments that we have to really kind of pull back from our thoughts and say, it could be better. This is how it looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is what an exciting electorate looks like. This is what our country should look like. And I want to be able to bring up to the stage none other than Sister Jenna, who has been a really wonderful ally and someone who is able to sort of, gather us in the deepest sort of way. And I wanted her to sort of open up the evening with all of you. So bear with me.
Thank you, Andy. Isn't he amazing? Don't you just love what Busboys and Poets is doing for our community nowadays? So I just wanted to thank you for honoring the importance of a pause. That nowadays, in order for us to be very clear, very optimistic, very forthright, and very benevolent, it is important that we take moments to just pause for a little, to take a breath, and to think about how the other person is benefited as a result of my choice. And every hour on the hour, my invitation to you is to practice something called traffic control, where you basically take 30 seconds every hour to pause and redirect your thoughts, and to take your thoughts to a level that always takes us back to the benevolence of the human spirit. So take a deep breath, inhale, exhale, and from your mind, I'd like you to send your purest wishes to the person sitting next to you, the person sitting behind you, the person sitting in front of you, and observe how it makes you feel. And I'd like you to send your pure feelings to every member of Congress at this time, inviting them to always do what's right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Sister Jenna of the Meditation Museum. It's wonderful to have you here among us. I wanted now to bring our MCs for the night. We have Medea Benjamin, founder of CODEPINK, a great human rights activist, and we have Raed, Jarrar, an Arab-American human rights activist, and someone that's a very close friend. We are so excited to have both of them here. So I'm going to bring up Medea first, and maybe she can say a few words and give us a little bit of an overview of what the day looked like all day today. She was in Congress for most of the day, and she came here to give us some of the details, the stories that were happening, that were historic in Congress, and then and bring up Raed to fill us in on some other issues that are going on. So take it away, Medea.
So it was quite a day today, and then when Andy asked how many people had been there, can you raise your hand again if you were in Congress today? So help fill me in as I try to give a description, because it was pretty amazing. First of all, there is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, her office, as I recall, is on the second floor of the Cannon building. And I heard people say, as they were coming into Cannon, where is Alexandria's office? Where is Alexandria's office? And the policeman said, go onto the second floor and follow the crowds. And that was certainly what it is. You went to the second floor and there were just long, long lines. And they were also full of TV cameras, all the cameras out there. And the thing about Alexandria is she was so generous with her time, because she said that anybody before she went in to be sworn in would be welcome to come in and get their picture taken with her. So imagine, she was just one after the other, and it was really thrilling. Then, how many of you went to Rashida Tlaib's office? Raise your hand. So that was quite a scene. First of all, to see the pride of the Arab community, to see people in their beautiful dresses, of course, including her, to see lots and lots of kafiyas in Congress, and then to walk into her office and see a map of the world. And there was only one place that was identified with a post-it. Guess what place that was? Palestine! Also, people were walking around with a button that you usually do not see in Congress. Anybody want to guess what was on that button?
Flag of Palestine.
What?
Flag of Palestine.
Flag of Palestine, there were some.
Love.
Love. I didn't see any love buttons. BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. While Congress is trying to put into our laws an anti-BDS bill, and they're trying to sneak it in next week. Meantime, you have people in Congress who have come out and say, I support BDS. So to have Sheila Jackson-Lee and Ilhan Omar saying that is quite extraordinary, and I would say pretty revolutionary for this Congress. Let's see, we also had the 2 Native Americans who were there, and going into their offices was also quite astounding because you saw people from the Native American community all over the country who had come in for this and were just so elated. And in fact, tonight they were going to have a Native American ceremony in the Native American Museum, but it's closed. That's right. So they had to move it to the Hilton Hotel. But still, it'll be really a wonderful experience, I am sure, if they can make it out of Congress to actually go there because of the votes tonight. Then we had Ilhan Omar. Anybody here went to her office? Woo! Yeah. To see the pride of the Somali American community there was just beautiful. And you know they've already changed the rules so that you can wear head covering, religious head covering, right? So her office and into the halls were filling with people who had their head covering and were wearing it very proudly. And let's see, so those of you who were there, can you help add some of the things that were really special for you today? What did you see here? Kate, you were big back there in the crowd.
Native Americans.
The what?
The names of the you mentioned all the other names, but not the Native Americans.
Oh, so we have Charisse, Davids,
And Deb Holland.
and Deb Holland. All right, so who else wanted to add what you saw today? Kate.
Oh, okay.
And this is Kate Gould from the Friends Committee on National Legislation, who does amazing work.
Yeah, it was such an exciting day. You know, one thing that really struck me, just how many people were clearly activists who were there. Like people who had campaign buttons, who had political buttons, who, who came in from all parts of the country, who were there. That was exciting. And very long lines. People stood in very long lines trying to get in. There was, one other highlight. Let's see, I'm thinking of Veronica Escobar. At her reception, so by the way, she is from Texas. She's El Paso, Texas, and she will be one of 2 of the first Latina women from Texas, representing Texas in the U.S. Congress. So it's insane to think that it's taken this long. And you walk into her office, and there were jars of salsa everywhere, and there were tamales. There was this like heaping pot of tamales on top of the printer, and there was like, you know, containers of different Mexican food all over the place on top of like the coffee machine, and so it was just really fun to see that. What else? Oh, and one thing about at Rashida's event, it was so fun to see, in addition to all the beautiful dresses and there were keffiyehs, there was also all this Palestinian food that was so exciting to see in Congress, like kanafa and so that was so exciting to see. So many activists and organizers. That is what stood out, I think, and just people bumping into each other who who knew each other from activism, and you could hear their stories that they were sharing about it. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Anybody else who's there today who wants to say something that struck them, that made it different or special? Anybody? Yeah.
I was just there today. It was just one.
We could have the walk-around microphone. There's a one.
we're just going to give you the mic. Who has the mic?
Somebody has to have.
Somebody in the audience has the mic.
It was just wonderful to see everyone. When we were waiting in line to get into Longworth, and everyone just looked fancy and nice, and those that were coming to see and go to the open houses, the staff was young, so that was just nice to see. They were overjoyed. And just everyone was there, the family, and the committee rooms had open houses, and just it was a wave of joy and happiness and change, and it was wonderful to be part of it for that brief moment.
Great. And maybe I can say this as a white person. One of the things that you really got struck by is that you could tell just sort of before you got even into somebody's office if it was a Republican or a Democratic office. The Republicans were just full of white people and lots of suits and ties and, very, everything was kind of, dark colored clothes. And as soon as you got near another office where there was a little more joy, life, diversity, you would say, I bet that's one of the Democratic offices, and especially one of the new Democratic offices. And I think that's really a difference that we're seeing with this new crop of people in Congress is, somebody came up to me outside of Rashida's office and, grabbed me and said, Medea, I just want to ask you something really important. Do you think they're going to be able to hold on to their activism, their connection with the grassroots? Do you think they're going to just lose it like the other ones do? And of course, I turned to her and said, that depends on us. And that is really the answer. These people, so many of them come from an activist community. And certainly it does depend on us, but something we haven't seen before is that they are challenging the rules of the game, the Old Boys Network, before they were even inaugurated. And that's what's astounding. For example, when they went to be oriented at Harvard, which is something that happens every 2 years, well, I don't know about you, I never heard about it, what it was like, any criticism of it. But this year we did, because they came out and said, hey, why are there lobbyists that are here as part of our orientation, talking to us about how Congress works? They said, it shouldn't be like this, and let's make sure that 2 years from now, there are no lobbyists that are part of congressional orientation. We also saw something pretty spectacular when it comes to the issue of Israel-Palestine, which is that, the AIPAC lobby, and when I say the AIPAC lobby, I mean a bunch of groups that push every new member of Congress to have a pro-Netanyahu kind of position. And part of it is that they have to go on the, quote, AIPAC trip. It's not technically an AIPAC trip, although it really is. They create a fake educational group, and they say everybody has to go on that trip. And this time, there are people like Rashida, like Alexandria, who said, not going on that trip. Not only that, saying Rashida, she's going to organize her own trip to the West Bank. So this is the kind of challenging to the establishment that we have not seen before, especially before they even got sworn in. So I want to pass this mic to Raed to talk to you some more about your hopes for this Congress.
Thank you, Medea. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Thank you, Kate, for all the information about the food. That made me hungry. My name is Raed Jarrar. Like Andy, I'm also from Iraq. I was born in Baghdad. I'm also half Palestinian. And hence the tie. So, as you would imagine, I've had a few experiences in my life that made me critical of the US government. And that has to do with where I was born and the fact that I was in Iraq back in 2003 when the US invaded Iraq and destroyed it. So like many people in this room, I'm really good at yelling against the US government, whether it's in the streets of Baghdad or the streets of DC, and we've all been involved in this. But we've also been involved in moments of excitement and engagement. And that I think where the magic of Washington, DC comes. Because we have this privilege living here to meet with members of Congress more than someone who lives in the Midwest or in Hawaii or whatever other states. I don't mind if I move to Hawaii, but that privilege also should come with some responsibilities because we have this access. So we are all excited. I think many of us were excited before. I was extremely excited after other elections. You know, who was excited when Obama was elected? We all danced in the streets here on U Street, and we also had that question of how do we translate this excitement into change? How can we get involved in a way that we will effect change without letting go of our principles? So the same questions stay here. So I want to ask you now, we heard from Medea and many people in the audience and one person on the stage, how things happen today. We want to hear from you what excites you about what happened today. Why is it a historic day? You know, for me it is a historic day because there is a new wave of diverse activists who made it to Congress. This is amazing. It is an exciting day to see another Palestinian like myself who's a member of Congress. That is amazing to find someone who's an Arab, who's a Muslim, who's in Congress, younger generations, people of color making it to Congress. So we want to hear from you. What do you think is exciting about the day? Because later today we're gonna talk about policies and what do you want to see in the next couple of years, what kind of legislation we will work on, what kind of grassroots push we're going to do. But let's start with hearing what excites you about today and why do you think it is a historic day? So I saw a hand on the stage, maybe we can start with this. Anyone on the stage?
So we have a mic back there.
And Andy has a mic.
We have a mic over there. I want to say something. What excites me?
Andy has something that excites him.
What excites me actually with this new Congress is I live in DC. How many of you are DC residents here? A lot of you. Didn't you feel a little bit left out a little bit today? Just a teeny bit? Just a teeny bit? The fact that we still don't have statehood? The fact that I want to bring up Anise Jenkins. Can you come up, Anise, for a second? Anise Jenkins will stand up for democracy for DC, and she has been an activist here among us for a long, long time, working on DC statehood. With the new Congress, with the new Democratic Congress, what is the state of DC statehood right now, and what are your hopes for that?
My hopes are that DC residents will become full citizens with full citizenship rights. Right now, if you went on the Hill and you're a DC resident, you don't have anyone there to campaign for, to lobby for, to ask them to vote for any bill. You have no one. Yet you're paying the highest federal taxes in the country. We're treated like a plantation. And it's wrong. We've got to break those chains that bind us to the United States Congress. This is serious. This is very serious. It's a hole in our democracy. DC as a whole and the democracy, it tells you that there is hypocrisy in our democracy. The Congress does not want DC to have these rights because DC is one of the most progressive areas in the country. We voted for use of marijuana. We voted for same-sex marriage. We voted for many progressive issues that are opposed by the conservatives on the Hill. We have no Republican co-sponsors of either statehood bill. We have a bill in the House, a bill in the Senate, but we have only Democrats who are supporting this legislation. This is a civil rights issue. This is not political. It's not partisan. There is no reason to look at it that way. This is a civil and human rights issue. I remember when DC wanted to use its own local tax money to pay for clean needle exchange, which would have reduced the HIV/AIDS rate among DC residents, which was at an epidemic level. But Congress struck it down. It would not let us use our own tax money to pay for clean needle exchange programs. This is wrong. It means that democracy, a lack of democracy, can lead to death. You can't get more serious than that.
Thank you.
I want you to stay up here at least for a minute, because this is an issue that we always talk about, right? I mean, how many times have you heard people say, this is a right, this is democracy, this is this. I used to work for DC Vote for many years, and you know, there was a time when we had all three branches of government, all three, the House and the Senate and the presidency was Democratic when Obama was first elected in 2008, 2009, and yet we still did not have statehood. Now, tell me, you want to hold the microphone close to your mouth, and I want you to tell me, part of the reason why we want to do these types of things is to get people engaged. It's not enough just to come and kind of be a spectator, because you've heard democracy is not a spectator thing, right? So involvement is really important. A lot of times people don't know what it takes. I have to tell you about the idea that we don't have statehood here in DC, we don't have representation, full representation in Congress. I am of Iraqi descent. I was born in Baghdad, Iraq. When we invaded Iraq in 2003, the whole idea was to bring democracy to Iraq. Once the government was reconfigured, there was an election that took place in Iraq to elect members of parliament in Iraq. As an Iraqi who left Iraq back in 1966, I had the right to vote for a member of parliament in the Iraqi parliament, and yet at the same time, I could not vote for a member of Congress in my own backyard as an American. And to make things even worse, you think that's ridiculous, right? My daughters who were born here in the United States, and my sons who were born here in the United States, had the right to vote in the Iraqi parliament, just by virtue of me being an Iraqi. Now imagine that. And yet, we could not vote for a member of Congress right here in our own country, the United States, which was quite ironic, frankly. We have people that have fought and died in wars right here in Washington, D.C., and yet they still don't have any say in what goes on in Congress at this point. So I'm turning to you, Elise, having been an activist for many, many years. You've been doing this for a long time.
Over 20.
Over 20 years you've been doing this. Aren't you sick and tired of being sick and tired?
I am sick of it. This is, I can't just express to you how distressing this is. We actually had, Andy allowed us to have a program where we listened to President Obama's last State of the Union address. And we really pressured him online through social media, talk about DC statehood. We got cricket. We got nothing from him about statehood. It's very frustrating. I mean, D.C. is overwhelmingly Democrat. What are we getting for it?
So what can these folks who are excited right now,
Yes.
who feel the energy that's out there, what can these folks do to help push this thing forward?
Organize!
Yes.
Organize, right?
Absolutely.
Organize is the key. But explain a little bit more. What is it that's been missing? Why haven't this issue taken up more than it should?
I think really it's because it's a dirty little secret that the 700,000 people who live in the nation's capital don't have basic rights. We need to get the word out to people around the country. And what we need to do is get them to contact their congresspeople who they can pressure, who we can't pressure in D.C., who rule over us. They ignore us. We have no right to vote them in or out. You need to get your relatives around the country to contact your congresspeople and get them on board with these bills that are on the Hill. We need your help. You need to write editorials. You need to contact the press. You need to go on the Hill. We need to have direct action. We need to have court cases. We need to have everything that has been used for human rights battles throughout history. We have examples of what works and what doesn't work. And also, we need to boycott. We need to find out what is going on that we can have an economic boycott that would bring some of these powers down. I would really like you to check out the organizations. You said you were D.C. Vote. We have Stand Up for Democracy, which is my organization, over 20 years fighting for statehood. That's freedc.org. If you want to donate, you can do that, but we will be out in the streets. We started out in the streets, and we're going to continue to do that. We need your help. D.C. needs the help of the entire nation to get this through. We're talking about power. Yes.
Do we know what our new celebrated incoming congresspeople feel about this issue?
We don't know.
For those of you that didn't hear the question out there, the question was, do we know what the new incoming members of Congress feel about the issue of statehood here in D.C.?
Delegate Norton, who's a non-voting delegate, she is a civil rights icon. However, she cannot vote on the House floor for any bills. She will introduce tomorrow, which is Friday, H.R. 51. There will be a press conference, and she is introducing it because she feels that it will go through Congress, through the House, because the House is now Democrat. So we need support for that bill, H.R. 51.
And it has 168 co-sponsors already.
Yes, we already have a record number of co-sponsors to that bill.
168 co-sponsors. Now, again, for those of you that are D.C. residents, can you raise your hand one more time, please? All right. Now, the people that raise your hands, cannot do this alone. We need to have folks from all over the country that will help to make this happen, because D.C., as you know, cannot even vote on their right to have a vote. So in order for this to happen, we have to make sure that every congressperson, every senator, everybody that's involved in this issue understands and knows about it. 80% of the people throughout the country have no idea that D.C. voters don't have a vote. Did you know that? It's really pretty remarkable. So without that kind of support, it's impossible to get this issue resolved. So I need you all to pledge, say, I pledge, to make sure that I continue the pressure on this Congress to get D.C. statehood. Thank you. All right. I want to bring up Raed. Thank you so much, Annalise. Thank you.
Thank you, and Medea. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I want to bring up Raed back again.
Well, that was exciting. So, I know many people are excited about other things as well. You know, how many people in this room are excited about opposing wars? That's good. How many people are excited about fixing the environment? So who wants to tell us about other issues that they're excited? What we're going to do now is we will write down some of the top issues that excite you. Later in the evening, maybe we'll put some of the policies that we can work on to achieve these issues. Ali has the mic, so if anyone wants to talk.
Hello, I'm excited today because Andy Kim, if you know Andy Kim, he was elected, right? From New Jersey. First Korean American in 20 years to be elected to Congress. And he defeated two-term incumbent, Republican incumbent, who was a staunch Trump supporter. So we'll see a new face, a new agenda from Asian Americans. Last time it was the Republicans, but now it's Democrats, so hopefully things will change. And as a Korean American, I'm concerned about the situation in Korea, especially the peace in Korea, the lasting peace in Korea. So Korea, from both South and North Korea, are geared for cooperation, exchanges, and sort of like a union between the two Koreas. So they really want a peace in Korea to end the Korean War and to move forward in the future to develop a one unified, hopefully unified, but more like a union of Koreas. But as you know, although Trump started this summit with Kim Jong-un, we hope that this will continue, that process will continue, the peace process will continue to prevail, and that the lasting peace in Korea will prevail. And hopefully, the Democratic Congress can support that process, even though there's some reluctance and some opposition to that end. But let's hope that the peace in Korea prevails. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you and the activism that you have done and the activism that's come from the Korean American community. We hear something like Donald Trump going to meet with the head of North Korea, and most people don't know what's behind all of that. And what's behind all of that has been the people of South Korea demanding an end to decades and decades of division on the Korean Peninsula. But it's also come from particularly a new generation of Korean Americans who are saying that we want to see a change in U.S. policy towards North Korea. And so it's very important, unfortunately, there is so much division in our country that when Trump does something good, even our friends start trashing it because Trump did it. And it can't be like that. We have to be much more discerning in the way we look at policy issues. When Trump does something we like, we say it's a good thing. When Trump talks to the president of North Korea and saying, instead of calling him Little Rocket Man and saying we're going to unleash fire and fury against him, that's a good thing. When Trump says we're going to withdraw troops from Syria, you know what? That's a good thing. When Trump says we're going to bring home half the troops from Afghanistan, you know what? That's half a good thing. The other half is to say we're going to bring them all home from Afghanistan. So thank you to the Korean American community for the excellent work that you have been doing.
Well, I think the obvious progressive things that haven't been listed there are single-payer Medicare for all, and getting money out of politics. We need to get rid of the military-industrial complex and a huge amount of money taken away from social benefits, and children running hungry, going to sleep at night with no food, and we're buying a damn F-35, and I mean all of that has got to change. The whole budget to the military.
Great points.
Can we say something on Medicare for all? Yeah. In the streets of the Congress today were people from the Center for Popular Democracy with their t-shirts that were saying Medicare for All. Yeah. And Bernie Sanders had a reception this afternoon, and at the reception, people were saying that just 2 years ago, when Bernie Sanders started talking about Medicare for All, other Democrats were saying to him, come on, Bernie, you don't go that far, that's too far, it's not gonna fly with the American public. And guess what? It's something that the American public, by vast majority, want to see in this country. Yeah. And it's the Congress that we have to push to go for that. Yeah. And so right now, it is really interesting to see how many members of Congress are suddenly coming out and saying, yes, Medicare for all. And not only that, it's people who are now positioning themselves to run for president from the progressive side are coming out and saying, yes, Medicare for all. So it's exciting that there's a lot of momentum, more than there has ever been before, for that.
Hello, my name is Khadija. I'm an activist and organizer with the International Socialist Organization. Thank you. Raed, your question was, what are we excited about and what do you want to talk about? One of the things I'm excited to talk about this evening is abolishing ICE as a start. And as a start, when I say as a start, I mean letting in all of the refugees. And that's not a matter of charity, that's because they are refugees because of the United States actions in their countries. And ultimately talking about they're coming over with their bodies, defying borders and nations, and showing us the way forward, taking control over their lives. And they need to be lauded and celebrated as such. So and yeah, it's important to talk about these things and talk about the extreme violence that's happening.
Isra, do you want to come tell us a little bit about your work with Oxfam for about refugees?
She's getting called up. I think I can make it.
So we're getting some emails from some members, and either their staff is going to be arriving here hopefully soon, and they'll keep us updated about what's going on with the votes there. Are there any staff members here from different from different members of Congress? Are there any staff in this room? All right. So the staff has been, I'm sure, overwhelmed, especially with the closing of government and all of that stuff. I understand that the cafeteria closed early today in Congress because of the cuts, which I find really interesting. So there's a lot of hungry people there. I'm sure they're getting a lot of food. People are sending it to them. We were trying to do it too. So hold on a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. I don't feel a lot of energy, so I just need you all to just cheer randomly. I was literally just told a few minutes ago that they wanted me to introduce myself and talk about what I did and what I do every day, which I will get to. And then I've also been really thinking about just today. So I was on Capitol Hill all day today, and I had a lot of different experiences, a lot of reflections. So I wanted to read a bit about what I just wrote for you guys. But before that, my name is Isra Shakid, and I'm an unapologetic Syrian-American Muslim woman. You have all the countries here, Syria, Palestine, Iraq, all of them. It's an amazing combination here. Iran, a lot of Iran. Well, shout out to the world here. Shout out to all the global diversity right now. I also, professionally, I'm an activist. Obviously, I think you figured that out. But I professionally lead the refugee campaign and migration protection campaign for an organization called Oxfam. Who's heard of Oxfam here? Wow, good amount of people. So I am their lead campaigner on this work. So we advocate domestically for refugees, temporary protected status holders, asylum seekers, what's happening at the border, family separation, all of that fits within my portfolio, and especially fighting against discriminatory policies like the Muslim ban every single day. I'm personally impacted by the Muslim ban, so it's really interesting doing this work every day. knowing that I can't see my family in Syria at all because of the ban, and having to come up every day and recognize the privilege and the survivor's guilt that I carry from why was I born and raised here while my cousins weren't, and how come I get to travel freely and speak freely and have an income and live in a shelter and live safely while they don't. So no matter what, I have a lot of personal motivation in this work. I show up and step up because I realize we as Americans have so much privilege and access that people across the world would honestly die and sacrifice their lives for, which is what we're seeing every single day with the refugee crisis, what's happening at the southern border. We're seeing that because people are in search of safe haven and safety. And the one thing I really want to articulate today is that no one chooses to be a refugee. No one chooses to become an asylee. No one chooses to become any one of these immigration buckets when you are forced to flee due to violence, persecution, war, and lack of safety for your family. So I wanted to read to you all some of my reflections, which I'll be posting to my social media later today. I have walked the halls and visited the offices on Capitol Hill hundreds, if not thousands of times over the past 6 years to lobby and advocate for real positive change. I have had members of Congress question my nationality to my face. I have had staffers speak slowly to me when they first meet me because they assume I can't speak English. I have been checked and rechecked and checked again in the security line, even when the machine in the beep doesn't go off. I have had members refuse to meet with me. I've had members nod quietly at me, saying that they take my issues seriously and care about the people of Syria, Yemen, Somalia, people here in the United States, etc., and then do absolutely nothing to prove it. I've been told to never talk about Palestine on Capitol Hill because it will alienate me further from what my only physical identities prove away from making change. And that stopped today. Today, we welcome two beautifully brilliant and resilient Muslim women into Congress. One, a refugee, which is so important to me, from Somalia, and another, a resilient Palestinian-American woman. It's absolutely incredible. And while all the other incredible women elected into office are amazing, and we are so proud of each and every one of them, I want to focus on Rashida and Ilhan right here and right now, because I never thought I would see this day. Literally, I never thought I'd be even saying their names out loud, seeing their plaques outside of their offices. I see parts of me in them. I used to think I wanted to be president or a member of Congress when I was young, and people would tell me, "You're kidding yourself," because someone like you would never reach a level of influence like them. And today, they proved it to me. They proved it to the millions of Muslim young girls and women that are looking up at them. They proved it to the women who are not even Muslim today, that you can do what you set your heart to, and that people will support you and love you no matter what you believe in and what you look like. They shattered the stereotypes that have existed in these halls for too effing long. They have broken the glass ceiling, and I know this is just the beginning, because they're not only here for themselves, they're here for me, they're here for you, they're here for every single person who wants to see positive, real change in a government that should be representative and inclusive of every single person, because we are all America, and America is all of us. Yeah. Maybe one day, pray for me. I need to get Andy to sponsor my campaign. I felt so much love and cried literally maybe a zillion times today. Standing in the hallway, I had actually looked at each of their offices with the plaque and just took it in, because even that was so different from all the Marks and the Johns and the Smiths that I've walked by before. And I can't believe that this surreal dream is actually reality. And so I look forward to this new chapter, because it really is a new one. I look forward to connecting with you all further. I look forward to seeing our new members of Congress on the stage, in their offices, and really being the beacons of light that we need them to be, that this country was supposed to be, with that Statue of Liberty, standing so proudly for all of us coming to this country. Thank you all so much for this opportunity.
How exciting. You know, I want to remind you that we are standing here in the Langston Room. How many of you have heard of Langston Hughes? Right? A lot of you, one of the most important poets of the 20th century. And when I opened this place, I did this mural up here, and the mural here was to remind me over and over again what this country is all about. These are the people that have struggled for so long to get so much today. And sometimes things may seem really, really dark. When people come and tell me this is the worst time of American history, you have to remind them that there's other times that have been worse. And there are other people that have risen to the occasion and make things happen. And one of my favorite poems is Let America Be America Again, which is written at the top of this. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America was never America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dream. Let it be the strong land of love, where neither kings connive, no tyrant scheme, that no man be crushed by one above. That's the America I know, and that's the America that we all are fighting for. Thank you. I want to bring up our host.
So let's get a couple more participation from the floor. I think one. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. That was so beautiful, by the way. That was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So my name's Ursula. I'm a federal worker and I'm furloughed right now. But I'm more fortunate than my other coworkers because I also bartend, so that's my little safety net. So my issue, there's so many issues, of course, obviously I'm a Black woman, but my issue right now that I hope that we can address is the student loan crisis. It's affecting so many people, and it will continue to affect people just because our education system, K through 12, and then we go on to higher ed, is so dysfunctional and broken that students are taking out thousands of dollars because that's what we're told. So I really hope that we can come together and really look hard at our education system and how we fund our education system and also alternatives to our education system. So, we need to look at apprenticeship or, gap years or anything else. But that's something that I hope that we can look to this next year, 2 years.
Hey, so my name's Kwanzaa. I'm also furloughed, Ursula. I feel your pain. Furloughed from the federal government and also from volunteering at a Smithsonian Museum, the African-American Museum of History and Culture in fact. All right, I'm a DC native to all of you all. That's right, for the natives. Have two issues. One, 7-year-old Jasmine Barnes was murdered in Houston, Texas, sitting in the car with her mother and 3 kids. Murdered by a guy who is still at large, an alleged racist. It was a white man who shot her in her head. They did nothing to this gentleman. So my first issue for the board, for that bulletin board up there, is gun control. Secondly, me being an African-American female in this country, I want to see that phrase that says liberty and justice for all apply to Black people in this country. Write that up there.
Where does he go?
In addition to Medicare reform, I am really looking forward to shifting the medical complex into prevention instead of just treatment. And I think that's actually how we get the money to pay for a better medical system, is to shift beliefs and values to prevent instead of treat. Because treatment is very expensive and it's not very effective. And also, I think that as part of that, I'm concerned about equitable food access and the role that plays on long-term health, and also on education for young children. So those are my two big concerns. Hey!
Hello, my name is Nicola Bastian. I'm from West Virginia. I used to live in DC and never decided to become a citizen because if I can't vote, why bother? And now I'm too lazy being out in West Virginia, but I'm still active out there. And I want to bring you both good news and bad. I want you to be aware of the coming invasion of the petrochemical industries into the Appalachian Mountains, and that will greatly affect things like water in the DC area, and we need to put a stop to it. And there's so much organization now as a follow-up from the teachers' strike in West Virginia, in Jefferson County, that we, out of 5 local and state representatives, 4 of them were our people that got voted in, against Republicans, against people who want heavy industry along the Appalachian Mountains. So I just want to bring this to your awareness, and I thank you for having this gathering.
Someone earlier mentioned ending the military-industrial complex. I'd like to second that, perhaps stopping arms sales to recent regimes such as Saudi Arabia and Israel. And the Philippines.
My name is David Barrows. Anyway, I think we have to stop this any involvement in Yemen. Just one of the many imperialist expeditions. So we need to get out of Yemen completely, as well as the Middle East and the whole rest of the world, as far as I'm concerned. Close all the bases overseas.
So I'm a woman and I love peace, and also I'm mom of the son. So when I saw that Muslim American woman being elected and also Native woman being elected, I really saw a lot of hope. So I really wanted to put on the LGBTQ issue too. So we hope, instead of going back, we hope to go forward.
Yeah, moving forward.
Moving forward. Moving forward. All the human rights issues.
Take 1 or 2 more, and then we're going to take a break here and have some spoken word.
Something that I don't think has been mentioned yet is the Trump administration rolling back pretty much all the progress made on the issue of campus sexual violence in education. I'm looking forward to seeing this new Congress like that.
Sorry, Medea, hi.
Hold it close.
Just put the microphone close to your mouth. I wanted to bring 2 quick things up. If you're on Twitter, please follow the hashtag Yemen Can't Wait. I'm on Twitter, and every day I move to tears. There are so many families
fathers, sisters, brothers, who are begging for the people in the U.S. to become aware. Our government has been funding and arming war crimes in Yemen. And we must face this and be accountable. And we must hold our government accountable. And also, I wanted to thank Medea. We filed this week a civil rights complaint to the Department of Education. We live in Montgomery County, Maryland. So I think that people really need to focus. My granddaughter is brown skinned. I know I'm not, so you might be like, what is this woman talking about? But we cannot become complacent because we live in a progressive area. There is institutional racism throughout every facet of American life. And if you are pale skinned like I am, you are morally and spiritually obligated to use your privilege to speak up for people who have been oppressed and victimized. This 10-year-old daughter has been discriminated against in Montgomery County Public Schools. And the Trump administration, I read the day after I filed the complaint, DeVos wants to do away with discriminatory discipline complaint processes. So, you know, this isn't an issue that you know much about. You can Google school prison pipeline and you'll be horrified. But even if you live in a liberal progressive area, you gotta work hard. And Medea, I thank you. You're the only peace advocate I know who's so inclusive of all these other rights, civil rights, all these other issues, and I'm so grateful for the work you guys do.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for sharing. We're going to have more time to be doing that. In the meantime, we want to call up a good friend of ours who is somebody who is doing exactly the kind of work of working with young people to talk about issues of race, to try to empower them. He is the director of We Act Radio, and he also identifies himself as an angry black man in therapy. Let's hear it from Timon.
I need a drink.
Thank you. Happy New Year. All right, I'm glad that we're going to take a break because we all going to need a drink after this. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm glad that my brother brought up the euphoria that was around during the Obama mania. And we all remember this, correct? A friend of mine, you know, was walking down the street, and my friend is black, and the election night, a random white woman comes up to him, grabs him, kisses him in the mouth, and says, "We did it!" And I knew we was going to be in for trouble. Because we have to face the facts. We are too emotional. We get wrapped up in the beauty, the picturesque, and what we would like to see instead of seeing it as it is. What happened during the Obama administration? We had Citizens United. We had a repealing of the Voters' Rights Act. We had Occupy Wall Street. We had the Black Lives Matter movement. We had the destruction of Libya. We had banks being bailed out. We have more black people and poor people in this country lose houses than at any other time in history. These are facts. You can say who and why, but these are facts. And we cannot be blinded because the pictures of them look so good that we can't critically provide an analysis. We was not pushing him. We was happy. We was hoping for the best. He came in with change. He left out, well, he's doing the best he can. We cannot, look, fool me once. I mean, so I want to party with you. I want to run up to a random white woman and kiss her in the mouth and say, we did it. But they will lock my black ass up. Okay? So can we really, really seriously this time have some specific demands, and let's go down there and be regular visitors to Capitol Hill, since we do have that access. Because if we are sitting here at one of the most critical moments in history, Trump is running the most corrupt country with the biggest army on the planet. This is not normal. But I appreciate the fact that he has brought us to a crisis situation. Because out of chaos comes communion. Well, whatever. But my point is, let's focus on some real things. And I like all the ideas that I've heard here tonight. I'd just like to add a couple to the list. One of them being, I do not think that you can sit here and support the troops and be against the military-industrial complex. I don't see how you can do that, okay? You have to make a decision. Your children should not be encouraged to join this military machine. We have to separate that. We have to understand what is happening in our names with our tax dollars overseas. Oh, yeah. We have to break that. I know it's hard for some of y'all. My father was in Vietnam, my stepfather was in Vietnam, and both of them tell me, don't ever go to the military. And I think that we have far too long had this wishful thinking that we're somehow the good guys, and we're not. We are not. Name me one country that's been improved because we went there with guns and bombs. I'm waiting. After what? We paid to rebuild it? What country have we rebuilt? That's all in the same war. That's all in the same war. That's all in the same war. Still World War II. All that happened in the same war. And I just want to say in closing that at some point, this young woman up here, I still can call her a young woman, has been drugged out of some of the finest places on earth. Kicking and screaming at the loudest of her tongue. She had her arms, was it broken or dislocated? Dislocated. I wish I was there. What are you willing to do? Because we're going to have to step outside our comfort zones, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, friends and enemies. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to risk? What are you willing to sacrifice? You're not going to get the changes that you want sitting here. I want you to enjoy this fellowship, but we're going to have to do something. And we have to realize that we have no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. And I need you to remember that. So hopefully all the new wonderful people that's coming in will be allies for our permanent interests. But if not, then they're going to have to deal with the fact that we are here and we mean business. And I hope you will join us in making those demands. And then 1, 2, 3, if everybody can say do something. 1, 2, 3. Do something! Peace and blessings if you're willing to fight for it. Oh, one last thing. One last thing. I am utterly ashamed of the Congressional Black Caucus for not supporting boycott, sanctions, and divestment in Israel. I am utterly ashamed, and they need to be held accountable for that as well. You can't play both sides of the fence.
Thank you, thank you. So, we are interested in coming up with a few specific asks, right? This is not just about us coming up with our wish list. It's also about us coming with specific questions or specific recommendations. And we were hoping to get these members of Congress to attend tonight, but it seems like the votes are taking much longer than anticipated. So here's what we're going to do. We will have this event happen here at Busboys and Poets at least once a month, and we will ask them the hard questions that we will ask them. So what we're going to do next is this. We will start transitioning now from talking about things that excited us to talking about things that we would like to see happen, or questions that we would like to ask members of Congress. Can I have everyone's attention? I know that it's been an hour and a half. Can I have your attention one more time? Everybody? Hello? Hey. Excuse me? Can I have your attention? Of course. So we're transitioning from speaking about our hopes and dreams to speaking about specific things that we would like to see or questions that we will ask members of Congress. If members of Congress show up tonight, we'll end up asking them these questions. If they do not show up tonight, we're going to ask them these questions in the next event that will happen in the next few weeks. So we're starting with Phyllis. Phyllis Menace will guide us through the transitioning from the hopes and dreams to the actual asks. So please join me in welcoming Phyllis.
Good evening. This is amazing. This is amazing. And I'm sorry, Raed, but I'm not going to give up talking about hopes and dreams. Just a little bit. I know I'm always the one who has to be up here talking about policy, blah, blah, blah. But I have hopes and dreams too, you know. And so, just a little bit. So, this was an incredible moment. This election, I mean, we talked about the intersectionality of identities of the people who were elected. People who were young, more women than ever before, more people of color before, the first Native folks, the first Muslims, all of this. This is huge. But wait, there's more. The intersectionality of work is also, of issues, is as important or more important. The fact that our new champions in Congress didn't just show up having come through the ranks of elected officials. They were people like us who came up through the ranks of movements. They were involved in the movement for the Fight for 15. They were involved in fighting for environmental justice. They have been involved in calling for bankers to go to prison for what they've done to redline black communities. These are activists who are now in Congress. The work on Palestine is not only because Rashida Tlaib is a Palestinian woman and proud of it. It's because she comes out of a movement that took Palestinian rights seriously. So this intersection of intersectionalities is what I am so excited about, what I am so thrilled about, and what I have so much hope for. But that's only part of it. That's only part of it. Because we have to be very clear here. We don't have the history in this country that some other countries do, that progressive parties get created out of social movements and that people who are activists in the streets move into the suites and make that transition. We haven't had much of that. This is a new thing. And we're going to have to figure out how to do it and maintain the power of our movements while we do it. And that means a couple of things. It means holding our new friends, our new champions accountable to what they promise. But it also means understanding that they are now, they are now playing a different role than they were playing when they were activists in the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement for Palestinian rights, or activists in the Fight for 15, or activists for environmental justice. Those issues remain the same, but their work is going to be different. One of the things that means is that we have to do more and better to take over what they have done. It also means we have to understand that we can't ask them and should not ask them to be our movement champions. They are now our congressional champions. Yes. And that's something very different. So let me move a little bit to the policy side of things here. Because I think while we're talking about, well, it sort of disappeared. Andy, what happened here? There was a list here of, oh, it's a list over there. I can't really see it, but okay, I'll take your word for it. I always take Andy's word for anything he says here. We have a list of amazing issues that we need to take up, and that we need to hold our new powerful members of Congress accountable as they hold up. But we also need some new principles. The reality is that our movements that gave birth to these new congressional champions have mainly been crucial domestic issues. The movements against racism, the movements for environmental justice, the movements for women's rights, the movements for LGBT rights, the movements for Native American rights. These are the movements that have given rise to these new members of activist Congress members. There's another whole set of movements that wasn't the movement that gave rise, and that is the movement for internationalism, the movements against war and militarism, the peace movements, the movements against war in Yemen, the movement for Palestinian rights, the movements against the continuing endless war in Afghanistan and Iraq. These are the movements that we need principles, not just tactical strategies, not just tactical demands. We need principles. Let me give you 5 to begin this. Yeah, of course I have a list. An article. You can all pick up copies later. But the question of what should a progressive foreign policy look like that isn't just about stopping what they're doing. Yeah, we have to do that because it's devastating countries and people around the world. But we have to call for something more than that. So let me start with these 5. Number 1, a progressive foreign policy must reject American exceptionalism and reject U.S. military and economic domination. That's number 1. Instead, we need a foreign policy that is grounded in cooperation, human rights, and equality for all. That means for all people and between all countries. Number 2, diplomacy must substitute for war. In every case. There is no war in this world that is being waged today by this country that is a just war. Not one. Not one. We need to stop the wars and begin the diplomacy. Number 3, there is no military solution to terrorism. We need to end the so-called global war on terror right now. Right now. There is no military solution, and the more people we kill, the more terrorism will rise. Number 4, the military budget and the war economy has distorted our society here at home. We need to change that. $716 billion this year is being wasted on the war budget. That's why we don't have money for schools and health care and jobs for everyone. That's why we have children that are going hungry in this country. That's why 140 million people in this country, 140 million, are either below the poverty line or just one paycheck away from sinking below the poverty line. 140 million people. 43% of our population, and the majority of them are children. That's not okay. And number 5, we have to recognize that it is U.S. actions around the world, military actions, economic actions, environmental actions, and climate-related actions, that are the driving force creating refugees around the world. And we owe a debt to the people whose countries we have destroyed. We owe a debt to those who have made it to our borders, and we owe a debt to those who don't even dream of being able to get here, but have been forced out of their own homes.
That's right.
We need to stop the actions that are creating the 65 million displaced people around the world, 24 million of whom are refugees.
That's right.
Refugees are not the problem. We don't have a refugee crisis in this country. We have a racism crisis. And we have to take responsibility for dealing with that racism crisis as the solution to the new lives that are necessary. We heard it already tonight. People don't choose to become refugees. People flee when they are desperate, when they are afraid that they and their children and grandchildren will be killed if they don't flee. And they flee out of desperation, and we owe it to them to provide refuge, to provide homes, to provide jobs, because it is the actions of our government and our military that have forced them to flee in the first place. Those are the principles that we need for a new foreign policy. And for the first time, we have some members of Congress who believe in these same principles. That's our challenge. That's our challenge, to move in between all of these domestic issues, to say, whenever somebody says, why don't we have money for free college education for everyone? Why can't we afford Medicare for all? Cut the military budget. That's where the money is. And that's the intersectionality that will give us a new country. All right. Thank you.
Great. How is everyone doing? Right. Wasn't that great? Well, we'd like to hear from some of the staff members or some of the members that are here, but I wanted to introduce just a spoken word artist and a customer here. Her name is Dior Ashley Brown. She's an actor, a poet, and a host, and a DC native. I want to bring her up here to tell us a few spoken words.
How y'all feeling? How y'all feeling? Proud DC native. My name is Dior Ashley Brown, MC. I need to find it somehow. I need to find it somehow. Hip hop, where are you? Hip hop, where are you? I need to find it somehow. I need to find it somehow. Hip hop, where are you? Hip hop, where are you? Release me from the dangers that contains us. Grasp me hold of my remainders. I'm left separated by my neighbors with people who think more or less of my complexion is contagious. Rather than believe they were sun-kissed by the Savior, over brown baby in the manger, but feel more connected to a ranger. 4 doors, DVD come out the floor with a 5-disc changer. And sicker is the thought that we were store-bought, now bought by stores, bought in the horse, bought in the penitentiary doors, and enough ain't enough, we need galore. Now my heart pours because I'm a victim of the system that has triggered the minority reported. Our future distorted by the millionaires who forged it. Being blind ain't the word for it. Hear no, see no, speak no, but believe no. The truth will come out, waiting for a handout. I need to find it somehow. I need to find it somehow. Hip hop, where are you? Hip hop, where are you? Sometimes the look I get so sinister. I just want to call her sister. So I compliment her on a sweater just to get to know her better. I'm no pretender. I know the world outside ain't looking any, but whatever, hey. We can't be better if we can't work together. Let's raise a child beyond the 8 mile. Let her look into a book so we can see Mona Lisa's smile. Hey. Instead of Mona Lisa, wow, hey. Held in your arms again like the golden child, because she's living a life like she's chosen. Living a life like she's more than melanin, but then again, they can't see past the synonym. I need to find it somehow. I need to find it somehow. Hip hop, where are you? Hip hop, where are you? Woman you see phenomenally black with no apology, living life phenomenally, what most of just ought to be, playing death, riding all up in my bodily. They feel others will follow me. I'm walking in my destiny, doing pictures like Cicilline, representing the recipe. Mama cooking those lessons, I was soaking in my progression. She's always passing those peas that later turned into seeds. And now I'm making tunes while they're living in their cocoon. I'm low and below the rim, my strategy is within. I'm low and below the rim, my strategy is within. I need to find it somehow. I need to find it somehow. Hip hop, where are you? Hip hop, where are you? Thank you.
much, and we are excited. We have our first member of Congress here tonight. So I want to introduce David Cicilline. He's a member of the Progressive Caucus. He's on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's a member of the Democratic House leadership. And we can't wait to hear from you about what it's like today, what's going on the floor right now, and what are you going to do? What are your priorities for the next 2 years? Thank you so much for joining us.
You should all feel badly for me that I have to follow Dior in that beautiful presentation. So I'm really here to say thank you to all of you for the work that you did in your communities and all across the country to make sure that we restore some sanity to America and that we begin to really repair the damage that this administration has done to our standing in the world. You know, I serve on the Foreign Affairs and Judiciary Committees, and we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources promoting democracy and human rights all over the world. And our leadership in that regard has been significantly diminished by this administration, this president, that are undermining the basic institutions of this country and have diminished our ability to promote democracy and human rights around the world. And we're going to feel the consequences of that damage for a long time, unfortunately. But today is the beginning of the end of that kind of unchecked authority by this administration. Because although the American people gave Democrats the House on a commitment to make sure people have access to quality health care, to make sure that we do everything we can to raise family incomes, and we take on the pervasive corruption in this town and get government working for the people of this country again, they also expect us to do our job and hold this administration accountable and demand that we have significant and real oversight. For the last 2 years on the Judiciary Committee, the committee has basically abandoned its responsibilities to hold this administration accountable. And as if they have, you know, every day begun to really undo what has made this country strong and great and the envy of the world, we sat there silently because our Republican colleagues were unwilling in any meaningful way to hold this president and this administration accountable. Yeah. That ended today. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you. Our work begins today. It didn't end when we were sworn in and took the majority. Our work begins today, and we need you to be partners with us and push us and make sure we get it done for the American people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman, for joining us. And
now I'm going to sing my next thing. No. Do not want that.
Many of us here are big fans of the CPC, of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and we were discussing our the main things that our crowd here, things that we're excited about. We have it on like a laundry list there on things that we're excited about. We would love to hear from you, not only what you're excited about, but what are your top priorities for the new Congress?
So I want to just talk about two things in particular from that list. One is I was a founding member of Mayors Against Illegal Guns when I was mayor of Providence. I was Mayor of Medea, Mayor of Bluebird, and then I worked on that previously when I was in the state legislature. I'm the author of the assault weapons ban in the House, and the ban on bump stocks, and a number of other really common sense proposals. One of my priorities is to be certain that we take some serious action to reduce gun violence in this country. We have a gun violence epidemic. The idea that we're powerless to do anything about it is completely wrong. We have the ability to substantially reduce gun violence in this country. And while there's no single bill or no suite of bills that's going to eliminate gun violence in its entirety, that does not mean that we should not do everything we can to reduce it as much as we can. There's a lot we can do. We have dozens of bills, really good ones, and I hope we will make it a priority. I know we will, to move forward on some proposals to reduce gun violence in a serious way in this country. Get weapons of war, these assault weapons, out of the neighborhoods of our communities once and for all. The second one I want to mention, which is not on there, but I know it's important, and that is I'm the author of the Equality Act, which is a piece of legislation that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And Housing, employment, public accommodations, jury service, federal funding, education. It's a fully inclusive civil rights bill, and the only way we can achieve full equality for our community in all walks of life is to add those two terms, sexual orientation and gender identity, to the existing civil rights architecture. When I introduced the bill last Congress, we had 198 co-sponsors. Every single member of the Democratic caucus, with the exception of 2 and 2 Republicans. We're going to reintroduce that bill, and the House is going to pass the Equality Act, and we're going to end discrimination against members of the LGBT community in this country once and for all. So those are just 2 of that list. Yeah, of course.
So we will open it up.
Maybe for like poetry and songs, not speeches. But he's making me say this, not my choice.
So let's have a couple of questions from the floor.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I'm not in church, sorry.
Yes, I'd like to know HR 51 will be introduced on Friday for DC statehood, and I want to know, are you a current co-sponsor of the statehood legislation? Okay.
Yes.
You will
I was last Congress, and I will be again.
Hi, thank you for being here. I have a question too with regards to ending gun violence. Are you amenable to viewing this as a holistically, so that would include police brutality, and also when we talk about gun violence and gun violence reform, like how are we going to ensure that the policies we pass don't have a disproportionate impact on Black people in inner cities, especially because right now, as it is, white people are happily enjoy their Second Amendment rights, and Black people aren't treated equally with regards to guns.
No, it's a really important. And I think we have to address the issue of gun violence and violence in all its forms, including obviously police brutality. So the answer to that is yes. I think one of the best ways to make sure that things that we pass work in the way we expect them to is to monitor them, to be sure that we have included in legislation reporting requirements, the presentation of reports to Congress, so that we have mechanisms to force us to regularly look at the efficacy of what we're doing. So I think you're absolutely right. And I think very often when we talk about gun violence, there's a lot of response to mass killings because there are great numbers of people in a single incident. But the truth is, there are victims of gun violence every single day in cities all across this country of people who weren't part of a mass shooting who we never mentioned. And so we've got to deal with gun violence in that context as well. My colleague Robin Kelly from Illinois is a great champion of reminding everybody after every mass shooting, like, this goes on with great frequency in my community, and we shouldn't only be looking at mass shootings, we should be looking at gun violence broadly, and I think she's absolutely right.
Hi, my name is Mark Moulton. I just want to echo Anise, but could you ask leadership, Nancy Pelosi, to talk about DC statehood? My other question is, can progressive Democrats please endorse and support the decriminalization of sex work, which affects poor women, LGBTQs, men, all across the spectrum? These people have expanded all their lives and doing something most of them only engage in temporarily.
Sure. I mean, I do think the Progressive Caucus, and I want to acknowledge Pramila Jayapal and Mark Pocan, who are the 2 co-chairs. I'm a vice chair, but I do think the Progressive Caucus has a special responsibility and will continue to kind of press our leadership to move forward on a number of issues, some of which you just raised. But yeah, we don't always get to tell the speaker what to say, but I get your point. Raising these issues, in particular on stage, is really important, and I agree with you.
Thank you, Congressman, for being here. You mentioned the Equality Act.
Yes.
Would that essentially also incorporate the never yet passed Equal Rights Amendment? I mean, essentially would that, include gender as opposed to simply gender identity?
Yeah, so I'm an original co-sponsor of the Equal Rights Amendment as well. I think Carolyn Maloney would not like it if we took the Equal Rights Amendment and put it into the Equality Act. So that is a separate piece of legislation. My expectation is we'll move forward on that as well. But it's there is one place where we add gender, which it doesn't exist in the current law. I think it's in public accommodations, where discrimination based on gender is not currently in the law. So we do actually add that. The Equal Rights Amendment, I know Carolyn Maloney has sort of led the effort, and I don't know that she would want to put it in the Equality Act. I mean, I'll talk to her about it. It's a kind of interesting idea. But I think she... Yeah. No, that was her question. No, I agree with you. I think they're separate things, but she was asking, is there some consideration of putting them in a single piece of legislation? And I think the answer is probably not.
Any other questions?
Should we get one more?
We have a question up here.
Phyllis has a question. Oh, yes.
One more question. Thanks, Congressman, for joining us tonight. This is fantastic. The question about foreign policy. The Progressive Caucus in the past has not been as consistent as we would hope on a lot of war questions. I know that you have been a strong advocate of ending the U.S. war in Yemen, which is fantastic. What can you suggest that we can do to push not only members of the Progressive Caucus that may be waffling, but in general, what can we do to make that so urgent issue even more urgent and even faster in coming up for a vote, to stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia, to stop participating with the Saudis in the UAE, to stop this collaboration with these horrifying regimes? Yes. What can we do?
I do think, there's going to be an opportunity on the Foreign Affairs Committee in the majority where we're going to really be the only place that can promote a different foreign policy. I mean, it won't happen in the Republican-controlled Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. It obviously is not happening with this administration. So I do think that the Foreign Affairs Committee has a real opportunity and obligation to do that. So I think, the Progressive Caucus, I think you're right, has not played as active a role in this space as we should. It's more urgent now than ever. I think just making sure that when you're talking to members of Congress about that whole list of issues, that you be certain that you raise the importance of issues that relate to foreign policy, because I think they don't hear about it as much from the progressive community as the issues that are sort of more domestic. So I think just talking to members of Congress and helping them understand you see this as you should, a progressive issue about progressive values, about our leadership in the world, and I think that would be very helpful. Thank you all. Enjoy tonight. Hope I'm your last speaker.
I think we had two more questions. Can you raise your hand if you had a question? So we have one over here. If you don't mind, we'll do these three.
Okay. Cool.
Allie?
1 second, where's this going?
You can start right there where you are. No. Right there.
Thank you, Congressman. My name is Sajid.
Can you hold it close to your mouth?
My name is Sajid. I've lived in the Middle East for many years, and I'm a US citizen. I work with my wife.
Yeah, we can't hear you. It's closer to loud.
Can anyone hear it?
Loud.
I would like to know about establishing democracy in Saudi Arabia, a country that has killed thousands of Yemenis, killing their own citizens, no religious freedom, no press freedom, no human rights, where women need permission from men for applying passports, buy a house, and of course we should not forget the 911 where 70 hijackers were Saudi nationals. Still, USC, Saudi as their friend and ally. Will there be any change in policy you can bring in to punish Saudi Arabia and give them justice and make the world a more peaceful and
yeah, so I don't know if everyone could hear the question, but it's a question which raises the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia and a country that does not share our values in very fundamental ways, that is responsible for unspeakable violence in Yemen and the recent murder of journalist Khashoggi, and the list goes on and on. I think there is a lot more we can be doing, and I think you can expect and should expect the House Foreign Affairs Committee to take action with respect to the relationship and imposing sanctions, as well as requiring a thorough review of the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia, military sales, and all aspects of our relationship. It cannot be It cannot be that the President of the United States sits before an audience of the world and says, well, I know there's, it might be they killed the journalist, maybe he didn't, but we sell them weapons. I mean, you talk about in one sentence undermining core American values and our moral leadership in the world. I mean, to me, that was one of the most sickening things I've ever witnessed. And we are in the majority now, and we have a responsibility to take action, so I agree with you 100%.
Also, it'd be good if you don't have foreign policy questions, because we have another speaker going to speak about foreign policy.
My name is Michael Beer from Arlington, Virginia. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I know you have a busy day, but it means a lot to us. I think almost all of us are really, really worried about the tremendous corruption here in Washington and the corruption of big money. And we hear lots of words every 2 years from various politicians saying, oh, we're going to get corruption and big money out of politics. What are the priorities? What's going to get done? How are we going to get corporations out of Congress and get our Congress back?
Well, I mean, first of all, I agree with you. In fact, when we put together the kind of agenda for House Democrats, I was the co-chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee with Hakeem Jeffries, Sherry Bustos, and I, we identified this issue of getting government working for the people of this country again and the corrupting influence of money as the #1 priority. In fact, people really understand that Washington is not working for them. And they're right, it's not working for them. It's working for the powerful special interests, the big lobbyists, and the big money. And people know that. And you poll it anywhere in the country and they know this place is broken and it's not working for them, but it's working, it's just not working for them. And so one of the reasons we're doing H.R. 1 first is because we really understand as House Democrats that if we don't fix this, the chance of us driving down prescription drug prices and raising family incomes and all the other priorities will not happen if we don't fix the system. And so it includes some really bold ideas about ways to financing public financing. Some very bold ideas. My bill, the Disclose Act, so we know where this money is coming from. We need to eventually pass a constitutional amendment to get rid of Citizens United. There are a number of us like me who have taken a pledge not to accept corporate PAC money. I did that in my campaign because I think we've got to set some kind of example in this. But you are absolutely right. If there is one big problem we have in this country, it's that corporations have too much power in this town. Yes. They write the laws, they write the regulations, and they serve their interests. You look at the income inequality in this country, it's not by accident, it's by design. It's because the lobbyists who wrote those laws work for the big multinational corporations. We know this, so we just need to fix it, and we need to have the courage to change the system, even if it means it makes it harder for you as an individual candidate to run, because you have to have confidence that the American people will support the change and they'll figure out other ways to be helpful to you in your election. But we have got to get to this issue. If we don't fix this, the chances of us fisting the rest of the stuff, I think, are really small. So I agree with you 100%.
Let's take one last question before we say thank you to the Congressman.
David, not foreign policy.
Well, I'm sorry, I want to ask one anyway. And it's about the fear of Israel, criticizing Israel. You have a slaughter continuing in Gaza of peaceful demonstrators. You have people actually have the nerve to insist on loyalty or supporting Israel in different states. When are we going to get independent of foreign lobbies, whether it's the Greek lobby, Turkish lobby, or whatever? When are we going to have real support for Americans and stand up against any government that has segregation like Israel? When are we going to get away from this hypocrisy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can't speak for others. I have been critical of policies that Israel has put forth. I've been clear about that. I do think it's another example of where we need to reform our system so the kind of influence of money in our elections doesn't produce those kinds of results. We need to have a foreign policy that reflects our values, and we need to have elections where people decided and not these powerful special interests and big lobbyists and big money. I think fixing the way we run elections, that we finance elections, that we draw district lines, all of that will go a long way to restoring democracy in this country. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Let's give a big hand to Congressman Cicilline. Thank you so much for joining us. So, raise your hand if you've heard of the Nation magazine. Yeah, some of you. If not, you might want to check it out. Great magazine. But every year they do a sort of best of, including like most valuable progressive in the Senate, the most valuable in the House. Anybody know who is selected as the most valuable member of the House this year?
Who? Say who? You, Medea?
It's a congressperson. Congressperson Ro Khanna. If you haven't heard of him, check him out, because he's quite amazing. And we have somebody from his staff here tonight, Gio Saba, who works on national security and foreign policy issues. Thank you so much for being here. We'd love to hear what you're working on.
I'm Gio Saba, the National Security Advisor for Congressman Ro Khanna, and he wouldn't have been named most valuable member of the House if it wasn't for people like you, the grassroots activists who actually care about these issues, who put pressure on members of Congress. You know, he can only do so much, in our staff, so we can only do so much trying to convince other members of Congress and staff. And I'll try and explain through a story of how grassroots activism on the issue of Yemen beat special interests, foreign interests, and a huge defense lobby that was up against us over the last year in trying to end the war in Yemen. So last year, I guess now almost 2 years ago in 2017, we introduced the War Powers Resolution to end U.S. involvement in the war in Yemen. We send the Saudi-led We give the Saudis weapons to drop, we refuel their jets, targeting assistance, we have Green Berets on the ground, and this started under the Obama administration. But when we introduced this War Powers Resolution, we were a minority, we did not have a lot of support. We were sort of yelling in the wind. People in our own party told us it was a bad idea, but over time, and over the last year, we kept fighting, and we had people occupy offices, have mass campaign calls, have, yeah, exactly. No, seriously, when we introduced this, we were sort of a lone, part of a lone wolf pack, and it took massive amounts of calls into members of Congress to change their mind. We got Senator Sanders to introduce the version in the House and the Senate. Their version of the War Powers Resolution passed. We lost by 2 votes, even though we were in the minority. We plan to introduce this next week in the House. We plan to pass it in the House. We plan to send it to the Senate, who will pass it. Hopefully we'll get a veto-proof majority, but if not, we'll force President Trump to veto it. But even if he does, I would say that this congressional pressure has been healthy and has changed things on the ground. The Trump administration, surprisingly, admitted to stop refueling the jets for the bombing campaigns in Yemen, and this was largely because of our efforts in Congress and all of your efforts, putting pressure on members of Congress and the administration. And so we'll continue this pressure. It's healthy for the UN negotiations that are going on right now. We had heard that Secretary Mattis told the Saudis during the negotiations that Congress is ready to act and that there needs to be a tangible, positive benefit outcome that comes out of these talks, which was, one of them was a ceasefire at the port of Medea, which was potentially going to lead to starvation and famine of 12 million Yemenis, and that was all due to congressional pressure. And so I just want to say thank you for the work that you've done. Like I said, we wouldn't have been able to be as successful on this resolution as we were alone, and it's due to people like you. So it really does matter, and want to just encourage you to keep fighting. Thank you.
We'll get a couple of questions from the floor. If anyone has questions for Gio or the congressman.
Yeah, and this is a typical question that us beggars come to the people who have some power. But particularly since Indivisible be organized, I've been watching other organizations that are locally based as constituencies to lobby their congressperson. And I did a big database, so it's now 1,700 progressive organizations. If you can imagine, some of them are like Move On with 7, 8 million, and some of them are 5. But they're pretty much all, as they have been for a very long time, in agreement on most issues with some refinements. But Indivisible is pushing, as Ralph Nader has for many years, for us to organize locally. And it's so hard to do it. We're good at talking about issues, but we're not good at going into the Republican local organizing committees or the local Democratic organizing committees and changing local policies and becoming intimate with local policies. But to me, and to others, this is where the hard work is. This is where sort of the boring work is, the work that takes a long time, the work that takes a lot of phone calls and one-on-one eyeballing and one-on-one meeting. And I guess I'm looking for affirmation from you as a staff member that when people come in, as I have multiple times with Move On or other organizations, and we come in and we sit down with you and we give you our talking points and then we go away, that the typical thing from the staff member is that they say, we're not going to do anything because they're not coming back. And they don't. I mean, we don't come back and we don't follow up and we're crummy at it. So my point that I want to make with you is please affirm for all of us here that what I'm saying is really important, that we need to form coalitions and that we need to stay on you.
Absolutely.
And we need to get to know you personally and we need to follow up with you on a weekly or daily basis in your constituency.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to name names of particular Congress members, but we saw a lot of members get on our resolution as co-sponsors because there was someone in their district that called, because there was a letter to the editor in their local newspaper that they read about and wanted to get on the resolution. It wasn't because I, the staff member, met with their DC staff member. It was because locally in their district, people say politics is local. A member of Congress's #1 priority is to get reelected. If they start seeing local pressure, local newspapers, letters to the editor in their local papers, you get phone calls. Every time someone calls our office, we determine whether or not that person is a constituent. And I can tell you that we prioritize and listen more so to constituents than not. And so if you are a constituent or you have coalitions in specific districts, you can see huge change from members of Congress who may otherwise not move the needle because they're here in DC and they're getting caught up in the blob and the swamp. But when they go home to their districts and they feel that pressure, we saw so many members get onto our resolution because of specific hyper-local district pressure. So it's absolutely right.
Thank you.
Let's get 2 more questions. Very brief questions. 10 to 20 seconds.
I saw that Congressman Ro Khanna put out a statement earlier on Twitter about PAYGO, and so I wondered if you could speak a little bit to how much he thinks that will actually cripple our progress in the House, assuming that the provision is kept, and also if you could speak to his thoughts on the balance of needing to push back against provisions like that, while also showing and having a sense of unity and never taking away.
Sure. So this is definitely outside of my range of expertise. I cover foreign policy, but on PAYGO, it sounds like the vote just happened. There were 3 Democrats who voted against the rules package. That was Congressman Khanna, Ocasio-Cortez, and Jarrar. The rules package passed, but it does sound like the Democratic leadership has agreed to waive pay-go, which essentially says that if you're going to have massive increases in spending, there has to be a cut or a payment for it. So if you're going to pass Medicare for all, there has to be a way to pay for that, whether it's taxes or some sort of cuts. Right. So it sounds like the Democratic leadership has agreed to, in certain instances, waive that. So it's unclear that if in certain key bills that they will do that. So the Progressive Caucus is hopeful that if Medicare for all is likely to pass, that the pay-go rule would be waived in that instance. But yeah, the Congressman Khanna is on the House Armed Services Committee, and it's amazing to me as a staff member to see how much money we authorize every single year, $700 billion. It's really incredible. So that is one area on the Armed Services Committee where we'll be fighting to reduce that number. And then in terms of his decision on that, for him, he felt like it was important to take a stand against pay-go, and that it would cripple a lot of the progressive agenda. And so for him, it wasn't an attack necessarily on leadership, but that he felt like he needed to take a stand on that particular issue and make a point about it.
We get one last question from
Thank you very much. I have a foreign policy question about travel ban. What is your idea or plan to get rid of this discriminatory ban on Muslim countries or so-called travel ban? This is my serious question. Do you have an answer?
Yeah, well, I think there are two routes. One is hoping that the courts will overturn it, but also, passing legislation that will prevent something like this from happening. One of the issues with the president's foreign policy, which is one of restraint in military, and it's sort of this American first view. And I think Congressman Khanna and others in the Progressive Caucus have this sense that we should have more restraint in our military, but that doesn't mean we need to turn our backs against the world and shut people away. And so this is a key part of the congressman's vision, is to accept as many refugees as possible, accept as many immigrants, to strengthen our country, and that just because we're not intervening in Syria or Afghanistan or Yemen doesn't mean that we have to turn our backs on the world, and allowing people to come into this country is one of the ways. And so either legislatively or fighting it in the courts is how we would overturn it.
Thank you.
I want to thank you so much, Jill, for the work you're doing and for joining us here tonight. So throughout the evening, we have been getting messages from the staff people of the members of Congress. And what they have been saying is, we want so much to be here with you, but we are on the floor still doing votes. We also heard that a party that Rashida Tlaib had been canceled, a party that Ilham was doing has been canceled. They are keeping them on the floor, which is why they have not been able to join us, except for David, who snuck out and is going back. So we are really sorry that they haven't been here, but we're glad that you've been here and we've had a chance to talk about some really key issues. And before we wrap it up tonight, we want to bring somebody up from the audience who shows what it's like to be resisting not only Donald Trump, but to be pushing all of our members of Congress for the things we as the people want to see. And that is somebody who is one of the founders of the Women's March, the national co-director of the Women's March, Bob Bland. So let's give her a big round of applause.
And I'm bringing Kristen up because we never do this alone. It's important to understand that the Women's March is not just for women, it's not just 70 women, it's not just thousands of women, it's millions of women and everything we've all done since January 21st, 2017. And a lot of that has been done this year in the halls of Congress. I know that Kristen and I, and many of you in the audience, were occupying the Hart Building of the Senate for 34 days in September and October. And while we didn't ultimately cancel Kavanaugh, we were told by both the left and the right when we started that this was a non-issue, that it was a non-starter, it wasn't worth our time, that there wasn't going to be funding for it, that nobody cared. And we still got out there and we made it an issue. Because women's rights are an issue that is worth fighting for every single day. And the rights of survivors are an issue, regardless of gender, that are worth fighting for every single day. And fight we did. And I also wanted to share a story from Kristen because she showed what just one person can do. Because it's great when we have millions out there. But I also want to make sure everyone in the audience knows that it also just takes one.
Hi, my name's Kristen Mink. Bob asked me to come up here.
I put her on the spot. Sorry about that.
I was the mom who confronted Scott Pruitt a while ago, back in the spring. And I think it's very important to say that I was but one very, very tiny nail in the coffin that Scott Pruitt really built himself. But really had been the work of so many activists and nonprofit organizations since the beginning of his tenure who've been working to take him down. You know, from Sierra Club to the Working Families Party and so many others. So when I got to, you know, tell him to his face how corrupt and terrible he was and how much we all disliked him and how he should resign, you know, I think he was already feeling so much pressure. The administration was already feeling so much pressure from all the work that had been done by so many activists on the ground. And so I think that moment spoke to a lot of people because it goes to show that what can feel like a pretty mundane conversation, a pretty mundane moment, your moment, can actually be a part of a spark, can be a part of a bigger thing. So seize those moments. And it's part of something that launched me into meeting people like Bob and getting involved with the Women's March and so many other organizations and getting to see that action on the ground and feel that power. We all come here and it's great to have these conversations in rooms like this, and I think that that's crucial for helping to keep us going, to bring us together. But what matters is that we carry that energy out into the streets, that we carry it into the halls of Congress, that we carry it into restaurants, into our workplaces, everywhere we go, that we seize those opportunities, that we make people see our faces, that we make people hear our voices. The Women's March, you can tell how powerful it is because if you look on social media, you will see that the bots have gone crazy trying to cause division, to sow these seeds of division, and planting these seeds of discontent that are just not there. They're just not there. And I think it goes to show how powerful these organizations are, these grassroots organizations have become. So that's how you know that you need to get involved, to get your body out there on the line when you can. I know that so many of you do that. I'm really preaching to the choir here. But, but it's so important to get out there, to stay strong, to stay united. And I think keeping that idea of unity in mind as we move into considering who's going to be our next presidential candidate, that we don't spend our time tearing down other Democrats, that we spend our time saying who we like and why, and remind ourselves who the real enemy is. And it's not the Democrats. Thank you.
Thank you. And to that end, we have a march coming up. So a lot of people said after January 21st, like, wow, you know, that was history. You made history. It's over. You know? But the very next week, we were out at the airports with so many organizations protesting the Muslim ban. And then 2 weeks after that, for International Women's Strike, we were out with a Day Without a Woman. We actually lost people over that, by the way. It's amazing how far we've come in the last 2 years, that from that, people were like, no, we already did it. We don't want to do else. This is distracting. I've got stuff to do. And, you know, and then we lost a few people, and then we gained even more people. And then we did the next action. We did NRA to DOJ, where we marched from the NRA to DOJ. And we actually had gun violence prevention groups be like, you're not allowed to name the NRA. Stop doing that. And we actually got pushback. We also got pushback for, you know, what's it called? Criticizing the FOP. And it was like, wow, really? Really? We can't talk about police brutality when we talk about gun violence prevention?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You know? And it was the beginning of something, you know? Because we gotta have these hard conversations. We gotta have them with our congresspeople. We gotta have them with each other. Yeah. We gotta have them at home. We gotta have them at work. We gotta have them at school. And we've gotta have them on January 19th, 2019, which is coming up in just 2 weeks. We're gonna show up again in Washington, D.C. and over 270 sister marches all across the country. And the beautiful thing about this march is, guess what? We don't need 1 million people at this march. We need dedicated people who want to come together with other people, whether they agree with them or not on every single subject. What we've been saying over the last 2 years is that unity is not uniformity. And it can't be. This movement is too diverse. We need people like CODEPINK and other peace organizations to be speaking to us, to be challenging us, to be challenging other people who may not agree with them. And the only way we can do that is in public. We need pro-Palestinian organizations and people to get out there and stand toe-to-toe with Zionists, to stand toe-to-toe with all sorts of folks from all sorts, like, heck, I even have evangelical family members that I'm having this conversation with right now, you know? And we need to hold all of us accountable for the ways that white supremacy hurts Black communities, hurts Jewish communities, hurts our immigrant communities, and hurts so many others. And we need to have those conversations in spaces like the Women's March. We also need to show Donald Trump that his problems are just beginning. That this administration is effectively over, starting today, and then continuing January 19th, and continuing to 2020. Because the truth is, when women come into leadership, we all win. And we're seeing this with this new freshman class, and we're going to continue to see this, particularly when we center women of color. I think we saw that with Stacey Abrams. I think we're seeing that all over the country right now with this most diverse Congress, and it can only get better from here. So I hope that you all join us for the Women's Wave on January 19th, 2019. And even if you choose not to join us that day, I want you all to think about, what way can I show up to support women in my community? What way can I be the best feminist I possibly can? And some of that way will be criticizing our movements, some of it will be criticizing our politicians, some of us will be criticizing our leaders, and then some of it will also be coming up with solutions to those problems and communicating those solutions in effective ways out of love and out of real care. And we need a lot of that in 2019. I think we all suffered a lot in 2018. I don't know about you, but 2018 was a really painful year for us at Women's March. And it's something that we need to all come together and bring love to our communities in order for us to heal together. And I know we can do it. So thank you so much. And all of you.
We took the House today. We're taking the streets on January 19th.
Thank you so much. How many of you are going to be out on the streets with the Women's March? All right, we want to see more hands from back there. Yeah. Thank you. So we want to end by letting you know about a new series that we're going to start at Busboys. And it really came out of our sense of excitement about a new Congress, but also our sense of responsibility. that the same thing will happen to the new members if we are not there constantly challenging them. So what we have felt is that oftentimes there's this division. There's people who say, oh, I don't do party politics. I'm not really interested. I don't believe in the two-party system, blah, blah, blah. And there's those who say you can only make change by doing it with the people who are in power. You know what? We have to bridge that gap. And we have to say that it's the organizing in the streets, it's the building of movements that allows people in power to do the right thing. And we have to understand also that it is not a privilege to represent us. It is their duty to represent us. And the only way we're going to force people, and remember, we pay their salaries, they are public servants. The only way we're going to force them to represent us is if we are in constant conversation with them. So we want to start a new series called Inside Outside. And it will be every month a different member of Congress who is championing a different issue that we care about. Whether it's issue about criminal justice, it's issue about campaign finance, about Medicare for all, whatever these issues are, we want to have those congresspeople here. We want to have the leaders of grassroots groups who are working on those issues, and we want to have anybody who cares about those issues have a chance to interact. So the first one will be on February 5th, it's a Tuesday. We haven't picked the issue yet, and if you have one you think is really important, let us know. And we will be working with members of Congress to make sure that every month there is somebody here that can talk to us about what they're doing and how we feel about what they're doing and what we are going to do to either help them push that through or make it better. So that's a great initiative. If you haven't signed up on the sign-up sheet, please do so, because that's the only way that we can reach you. Lily, if you can hold that up to let you know what's happening. And where did Andy go?
Outside.
So we want to end by giving a special thanks to Andy, because he opens up this space constantly to give us the kind of conversations that we need. So Andy, can you close us out as we go forward here? Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much, all of you, for taking the time out to be here, to be among others of like mind, and be able to make this country better. I have to tell you, one of the reasons why I actually opened Busboys and Poets is because I wanted to have a sense of community that I felt was lost. I felt like, you know, after 9/11 happened, being an Arab and a Muslim living in this country, you feel very isolated. And there's been many incidents where all of us have felt very isolated. And sometimes we need that place of gathering where people come together, look at each other, rub each other's back, talk to each other, and really walk away feeling a lot more empowered, a lot more sort of ready to take on the world. So thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you so much, and stay tuned. Please stay in tune, because it's really important to have this conversation go beyond just this one little gathering. There's going to be many more, as Medea mentioned. This Inside Outside series is something that we've been wanting to do for some time, and we feel like we have a Congress now that can listen at some level, and we're going to invite some of those members that were supposed to come here. They were already committed to come to some of those events we're going to do, but they couldn't come today, and they apologize profusely. I got so many emails here saying, I'm so sorry that we can't be here, but we appreciate you all and hope to see you next time. Thank you so much. And special thanks to our hosts here, Raed, Jarrar, Medea, Sheila Jackson-Lee, and everyone else that came up here. Thank you so much.